Lindsy. Welcome to Cancer Heroes. I am so looking forward to having this conversation with you. I've been following you on Instagram ever since we met in Speaker Slam, and wow, it's been quite an impressive, all the things that you've been doing and creating. You've been one of the faces of Princess Margaret Cancer Foundation. So I know you're here to talk about cancer and your journey and your experiences, but we're gonna step back a little bit and talk about what was your life like before you had cancer. What do you do? Where are you from? And tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure, and thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be on the Cancer Heroes podcast. I think that what you're doing is really important, and all of the stories that you're sharing. I was a mother of two very young children. They were 2 and 4 when I was originally diagnosed with early stage breast cancer. At that point, I was running a very busy fitness business. It was personal training and fitness classes, webinars, that kind of thing. So it was quite shocking when, I announced to my clientele that I, the picture of health, their health mentor, was diagnosed with breast cancer at the age of 33.
Oh, wow. Now that shook me up too, because I had this belief that people who are into health and fitness cannot have cancer. Absolutely. I mean, that's interesting because now you make me think. I have an uncle in India. He was actually playing football at the provincial level, and he was a coach. He didn't have any, smoking or addiction or alcohol addiction or any kind of habit like that would provoke any illnesses. And he died of prostate cancer. So,
yeah,
wow.
I know, it surprises people. And, I actually happen to know quite a few people who've been diagnosed with breast cancer in their early 30s, late 20s, early 40s. So to me, it feels like the incidence is on the rise, but still nationally and globally, less than 10% of breast cancers are 40 and under. So it is actually still really rare. And I definitely know that most people think that just because you have a really healthy lifestyle,
yes,
you eat well most of the time, don't smoke, etc., that you won't get cancer. But the fact is, you can be diagnosed with cancer. And I will mention that I wholeheartedly believe that because of my healthier lifestyle and nutrition, exercise, mindfulness, those types of things, I was actually able to navigate treatment, all of the treatment and surgeries, and get through that, healthy. I believe that it was because of my lifestyle. So it's never wasted to have those healthy habits.
That is true. I mean, I can. That must have supported your treatment,
exactly,
your lifestyle and your habits. Okay, and tell me, how did it support your lifestyle?
Sure. So
your treatment.
Yeah, that's okay. So when I was originally diagnosed, I had to shut down my business because a double mastectomy was the very first thing I had to do, surgery, so I could not work. And then I went into 6 months of chemotherapy. I did 25 radiation treatments on my chest and armpit area, and that was because I had some lymph node involvement as well. So I had 6 lymph nodes removed, and then I did an extra year of targeted therapy for my subtype of breast cancer, which is HER2 positive and hormone negative. So that means that chemotherapy, radiation, surgery, but then I also had the ability to be able to do a targeted therapy as well to really make sure that the recurrence risk was as low as possible.
Okay, that's interesting. This is a lot of new information for me. Tell me about the mental, emotional impact on you and the family, especially considering you have 2 young kids.
Yes. So my children were 2 and 4 at the time, which means they don't know life without a mom who has cancer. They're now currently 8 and 10. So when they were 2 and 4, we really just, used age-appropriate terms. We told them the truth that, mom was sick, I had some bad cells, I was gonna have some surgery, and then when I had to go through chemo, that I was going to lose my hair. And, side note, because I've been in and out of chemo for about 6 years, this is not my real hair. And it's super fun to have long hair again, because this is what I had before I was originally diagnosed. But when you're finished cancer treatment and you're a cancer survivor, it doesn't end there. And I honestly believe that because that's when the support kind of changed, that's obviously when my actual, doctor support changed, suddenly you're left with a now what? And, to kind of transition into the next part of my story, I was still not well after I was cancer-free. I'd gotten back to work. I was starting to do, fitness coaching again. It was pandemic days, so I was doing lots of virtual work. And we were looking for the reason why I wasn't feeling myself. And then I started to have some back pain. And I had assumed that the back pain was because I started exercising again. I would pull a muscle really quick and doing things that didn't seem hard. And then it would take me weeks to recover. And that is when, a rheumatologist gave me an MRI to check for arthritis. And that is when, incidentally, they found that my breast cancer was back and on my spine. And at that point, it is stage 4 metastatic breast cancer and no longer curable.
So for those who are not aware of this, how would you explain your breast cancer is back in your spine?
So, the stage 4-ness is the term I like to use. The stage 4-ness of breast cancer was, I always knew as long as you're not stage 4, breast cancer is one of the good cancers. And, I cringe when I say that because there is no such thing as good cancer. But I remember thinking, I'm gonna be okay as long as it's not stage 4. So the day my doctor phoned me and told me it was stage 4, I immediately heard the term death sentence in my brain. And it was all I could do to push out the thoughts of the fact that my future would disappear. I knew right away that no one survives breast cancer. It's not a low incidence of survival, it's a no incidence of survival. Some women, 5, 10, 15 years, you hear of some unicorns who are still alive after 20 years, but it's so low to hear stories like that it's not even included in the statistics. So I knew that now I was going to be fighting to live as long as possible with as high quality life as possible. And the only thing I could think of was, how do I tell everyone in my life, never mind prepare my children for a life without me?
Right. Well, that's a very difficult thing to face. It's one thing to deal with cancer and a totally different thing to have that conversation with your children.
Exactly.
And that's a struggle. That was my struggle as well. I felt it was tougher than dealing with cancer. You mentioned the word that's an easy kind of cancer, and that's something I've faced as well because I had thyroid cancer and people would say, oh, that's the easy one.
Yeah.
What would you feel if someone said, oh, that's an easy cancer? Is that the right approach to a person dealing with cancer, that your cancer is easy, someone's cancer is tough?
This is one of the things that I get approached to talk about all the time because, I've had to tell people I have cancer twice, 2 completely different scenarios. It's almost like I've had 2 different cancer experiences. People don't know what to say. And I try so hard to forgive them for that and appreciate, where they're coming from. They just want to make you feel better. Don't worry, it's the good cancer. It feels dismissive. The best way to support someone when they're announcing that they have a very treatable cancer is to just be there for them, listen to them, ask them how you can help, and just never dismiss how hard anything is, no matter what. It's not a competition, stage 4 versus stage 1 or thyroid cancer versus breast cancer. It's not a competition. And I know that it hurts too when people are glad they're not in my shoes. And I'm happy that they're not in my shoes as well. But I think that everybody just, if they just took 2 seconds before they said something, that would be a really great strategy. Just think and then respond. And that would really save a lot of hurt feelings.
I agree. What tips do you have for people that are listening to someone who's sharing their cancer stories other than think? What are some of the ways they could communicate and say, and show their support?
I have had, I guess now 6 years of practice, So it is easier said than done for me at this stage in the game. But when I started to let people in on how my disease had progressed and changed, I would tell them up front, I'm about to explain some things to you. I really don't need you to respond. I just want you to know I'm still processing. I will answer questions later. Or please feel free to send me a message, but please understand I may not get back to you. It's not personal. Because you start to learn that, you have friends and family members who all have their own way of supporting you. And sometimes that works for you and sometimes it doesn't. So just starting to understand that and just be upfront with the kind of support you need.
Right.
It would make them more comfortable, and then ultimately it really helps you more.
So being clear in your communication.
And upfront, don't be shy. Be honest with what you need.
Thank you for sharing that. What do you think has changed in your approach to life or family after cancer? Everything has changed. And we talk all the time about how it's a little sad that it takes a medical emergency to really prioritize and get intentional with how you spend your time in life, but that is the way it is. So I actually really try to, with my story and my voice, try to be that medical emergency for someone else. Let me help you see what's important here, or let my story, remind you that you need to, focus on these other things or not sweat the small stuff. And I understand everybody's life and they experience their life in their own ways. Every day does not have to be a good day. I do not have good days. I still fight with my husband. I still get annoyed at my children. And it's funny because right away I was like, I can't even be in a fight, for 1 minute, or I can't, want my kids to be in the other room for a break. Like, that doesn't make me a good mom. I might not be around forever. It's an exhausting way to live. Yes.
You will burn yourself out. So you just have to know that in the majority of the moments you're being intentional, and it really has changed how I spend my time, listening to my children. I remind myself, if I had limited days, would I go on that bike ride, or would I try to, watch a TV show that I've already seen 3 times? You really do try to fill your time more intentionally.
Wow, that's beautiful. What are some of the questions that your children ask you?
That is a tough one. That is a question that would get me emotional, because you have to be very age appropriate with them, but you do have to be honest with them. So they know that I have cancer. They know that I explained it like a chronic disease where I'm always going to have this disease. Sometimes it'll get worse and I will get back on treatment. Sometimes I will be stable and you won't even know that I have it. And just that we don't really know what the future has in store. But my 10-year-old daughter asks me very direct, very difficult questions all the time. And that's just because she's so curious and nothing gets past her. And she will ask me, we'll be talking about something in the future, and she'll pause and start to ask me a question, and I'll catch her stopping, and she'll be like, I don't want to hurt your feelings. And I'm like, just say what you're thinking, knowing what's coming. And she'll say, are you going to be around then? And then what I have to do and what I do is explain, I definitely plan to be around. There's no reason why I wouldn't be around yet. And sometimes I'll just get into, thank you for telling me that you were thinking that. I understand why you're thinking that, and I'm so sorry that you have to think of things like that. It's tough being you. And I kind of switch it to her and just try to support her through the heaviness by, acknowledging it.
Wow, that's so wonderful, and that's so caring and nurturing of you. Yes, children ask a lot of straight questions, and it's very difficult to address that. We have to be very mindful about how we address those questions.
And the one thing that I learned was, at first, when I was, I definitely was depressed for the first 6 months of my diagnosis. I was trying to navigate that, find hope. I was so caught up in how to make it easy for my kids after I'm gone. You know, every little thing I said, everything I did, I was preparing. I'm like, we got to prepare them for this. And then I felt guilt that I would not be around for the hardest thing that they'll ever have to go through, which could be losing their mother. And it hit me that I am doing that. I am here right now, able to prepare them and help them build coping skills and help them, you know, build a belief in something bigger than what we are right now, and, you know, create symbolism for them and just do all of these things for them right now. I am able to help them.
That's true.
And, you know, maybe it doesn't matter. There is always hope that I'm not a statistic, and maybe I will be, you know, that sample size of one that is unique. And there's a lot of people out there defying the odds every day, and as long as I'm hopeful, they'll be hopeful. And that's all I want for them.
Wow, that's powerful. So when you were depressed and now where you're at, like what did you do and how did you support yourself to pivot, to shift from that state of depression?
You know, it's very important to acknowledge that the hopelessness that someone in my shoes feels is very real. And as a health and fitness professional, I knew about depression, but until you experience it, you really have no clue how powerful it is. Rationally, you know that you're just sad, you should be fine, but man, it is so powerful. And I remember I was afraid to build connections with my nieces and nephews. I was afraid to let my friends get too reliant on me. You know, I was afraid to be around because I didn't want anyone to get attached to me. That was how powerful that was. And I'm an extroverted social person, and I was just, you know, pulling away from everyone. And it took some time, but I was eventually talked into, thankfully, trying some antidepressants. And about a month after the antidepressants were started, I remember laughing at something silly that my daughter did, and it brought tears to my eyes because it hit me. I have not laughed in months, and I'm a very funny person. If anyone's wondering, I crack jokes, I laugh at jokes, I'm hilarious. Anyways, so it hit me, oh my goodness, I haven't laughed in so long, and I was like, this feels great. But since then, I was on the depressants for about 4 months, and then I went to a meditation retreat. It was an intense 7-day meditation retreat where it was just me. I focused on myself. My mother joined me. The two of us just meditated, learned about meditating, the mind and body connection. And I stopped taking my antidepressants while I was there, and I haven't been back on them since, almost 2 years later. The power of meditation and just harnessing your thoughts, it's not the absence of thinking, it's noticing that you're thinking. You know, people are always so scared to meditate, including me, because, oh, I can't do that, my mind's so full. When you just try to meditate, it's amazing what that does. It changes the whole trajectory of your day, and it just makes me feel like I have a little bit more control in my life, and that is the number one thing I recommend to everybody now. Meditation truly got me off medication and saved my life, saved the quality of my life, you know, saved my kids' experience with their mother. That's how I can walk through life, because it's hard knowing what you know.
That's true. Well, that's why sometimes they say meditation is medication.
Yes, I like that. I haven't heard that. It is. It's better than medication.
Yes.
And I won't, I don't have hours to get into the science behind it, but meditation is effective with mental health issues, 80 to 100% of the time. Drug trials get approved at 20 to 30% efficacy. Right. So start meditating.
Very true. I started meditating after I had cancer.
Of course.
So it's been my journey as well. Well, thank you for sharing that. Meditation is medication, and we highly recommend that. It has no adverse side effects.
Exactly, and it's free.
And it's free.
Totally free.
It's free. And, there are a lot of people that have asked me as well, including someone, a nurse, who was new to meditation. And she said, I have this fear that if I, go into some kind of, guided meditation where I'm listening to a visual meditation, what if I get stuck there wherever I go? And there's no such thing.
No.
There is absolutely no such thing. The good thing about meditation is it makes you present to you, and you're in charge. You're leading the journey.
Yeah.
And you go wherever you want to go, come back whenever you want to come back.
Yeah. And those kinds of fears can be quieted down by learning about meditation and the education around it.
Absolutely, and experiencing it, and have someone who's an expert guide you and lead you through it. Absolutely. And having more conversations about it.
Yes.
So when I had cancer, I had 4 kids that were dealing with the impact of it on the family, and I had kids having this conversation in school. Did you have any experience like that where your children were speaking about you having cancer in school and you having to answer questions? And if you did, how did you address those?
I did. At my kids' school's Terry Fox Day every fall is a huge holiday. I call it a holiday because my kids love that day. They loved it before. Actually, I guess I always had cancer when they did Terry Fox Day. Anyways, they have always talked about me in class. I've always told the teachers beforehand, just in case you hear this, it is true, because you never know what kids do. Like in kindergarten, my kids were talking about it. I've always told my children they're welcome to talk about it. If they feel like they need to talk about it, trust in your friends, trust in your teacher. It is their story. They are having their own life experience with cancer, having a mother with cancer, and I don't ever want to tell them what they can and can't say. They know personal, details are personal, but I think that giving them the freedom to be able to do that and the permission to do that has lifted a weight off of them. And then I get to hear about what they tell their teachers and their friends. And sometimes their friends' parents come to me and say, I had no idea, or just so you know, your son said this, and it's always positive. And I did worry that, what if other children's parents don't want them to know about cancer? I did worry about that. But then I realized I can't worry about everything in the world. And I just have to be honest with my children, give them permission to be honest with themselves, and allow that to work itself out. And the support has been incredible. I've really had, no negativity in that sense.
Thank you. I know that recently you were part of a run.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about it.
Yes.
And I have this belief that it's not easy after you have cancer to go on do a 5K, 10K run. Shatter that myth for me.
Sure. Well, listen, I might just slightly break through that myth. I was a fitness professional, and running, working out, that was my medicine for years and years and years. That's how I got through everything. So when I first had surgeries and then radiation and chemo and everything, exercise got really difficult, especially after the radiation that I had on my spine. And the back pain is my biggest challenge day to day, along with the rest of the world, I know. But, I can use it as an excuse. But you are so much more capable than you think. The body, and I honestly, when I think about this, my mind starts to just be blown, because when I think of the things that my body has been through, yet I can walk around and no one who doesn't know me would have any idea. I start to list the physical procedures, surgeries, all the medications that bring you down to nothing. And then this body is able to come back every time. It's incredible. The one thing that has definitely been scientifically proven to not just help aid the effectiveness of treatment, but to help your recovery after treatment is exercise. Nutrition, good for you. Exercise is better. Stress relief, good for you. Exercise is better. Not smoking, obvious. Exercise is better. So It is very important to work your muscles because building up the muscle mass around your bones is good for your skeleton, your bone density, your metabolism, how you metabolize stress, things like that. So I did a Princess Margaret Walk to Conquer Cancer. It was 21 kilometers of walking, plus the walking before and the after.
Wow.
I was honored to be the opening speaker, the patient experience. So my adrenaline was running that day. I was very nervous to get on stage. It was over 2,000 people. And then I had to get off stage and go do this 21K walk. And I was exhausted afterwards, but man, did it feel good to be sore and exhausted. And just a couple days later, I was back to being able to do my exercise again. I'm not joining any fitness competitions anytime soon. I'm not lifting heavy barbell weights at the gym anymore just because of the nature of my metastasis. But you can do it, and you should do it, even if it's just, playing a sport with your children. Move around. Exercise will help you live longer. Exercise, exercise, exercise. That is the cure.
Thank you. I'm inspired.
Good. Yeah.
My final question to you is, what would be 3 things you'd like to, as a cancer hero, 3 things you'd like to give as tips to people that are dealing with cancer?
Sure. Cancer hero. I definitely have never considered myself one. However, if I consider my fellow cancer patients as heroes, then I guess it's fair to think of that. My number 1 thing would be to exercise. There we go. My number 2 thing would be to get educated, because although it may not be fair that we need to be so on top of our own medical records, our medical imaging, our treatments, latest medical research, that is a huge player in how you get your treatments, when you get your treatments, and how successful they'll be. I cannot tell you how many times I have approached my oncology teams, and I have two different hospitals. I'm very lucky and special. Special meaning I'm one of those people that has cancer that needs 2 different hospitals. But I've approached them with something, and then they go, "Oh yeah, that's an option. Are you interested?" And I'm like, "Well, can you tell me? You're the doctor. I don't want to make that decision." And it's amazing how they will make decisions based on information I present to them. And I will tell you that after my metastasis was confirmed, I was asking for more scans because we hadn't checked everywhere that breast cancer spreads. And they just kept kind of telling me, "Well, we don't need to if you don't have symptoms." And it was the research that was telling me that there's a really high chance that if I'm dealing with what I'm dealing with, something else could be happening. And it took me the guts and the bravery to say, "Actually, I need you to do this scan." And it took 90 extra seconds to scan, and they found more cancer. So you have to advocate, you have to trust your gut. So now how many tips do you? I'm not getting you. I feel like I'm giving you way more than 3. I'm gonna write a book and give it to you.
Awesome.
So I'll stop there, but that's my advice. I hope that was easy to follow.
That was easy to follow. Your advice was, number 1, exercise. Number 2, educate yourself. Number 3, advocate
There
for
we go.
yourself.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you.